Imagine waking up tomorrow and just realizing you've lost like 13 IQ points overnight.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a terrifying thought.
Right. And you didn't suffer a head injury or anything. You didn't age decades in your sleep. You just looked at your bank account.
Ah, yeah. The biological reality of financial stress.
Exactly. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are tearing into a piece of source material that, let's be honest, it has a title that sounds like absolute internet clickbait.
It really does.
It's called Warren Buffett, Eight Money Secrets the Poor Are Never Taught. And, when you see a title promising hidden secrets of wealth, your natural instinct is to just roll your eyes and keep scrolling.
Which is completely warranted. I
Yeah.
mean, we're all so conditioned to ignore those loud, shiny, get-rich-quick promises.
For sure. But peeling back the layers on this specific transcript, it actually reveals something entirely different. It's this really profound structural breakdown of how the modern economic engine actually operates.
Yeah, it dives deep into human psychology, cognitive science, and just the stark mathematical realities of our financial system.
It's essentially the alternative curriculum of wealth, right? The
Yeah,
map that simply isn't handed out in traditional schools.
right.
And the overarching premise here is something that, it might make a lot of people uncomfortable at first glance. It's the idea that the financial system isn't broken, it's actually working exactly as it was designed to work.
Exactly. It's designed to process people, extract labor, and then return just enough in wages to ensure they have to come back the very next day.
It's grim.
But that brings up a critical distinction the author makes early on. This cycle of poverty, it isn't maintained by some grand malicious conspiracy or, a shadowy cabal of billionaires.
Right, it's not a movie villain plot.
No, it's maintained by silence.
Yeah.
It's simply an absence of information. The rules of the game are hidden in plain sight, but if you don't know the vocabulary, you literally can't read the rule book.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we want to explore these 8 structural truths impartially, which is our mission today, we really have to start at the actual starting line.
And according to the source, that starting line is psychologically and structurally rigged against the poor.
Yeah. So to understand how to build wealth, you first have to understand this immense gravity pulling people down.
The source refers to this as the survival premium, or like the invisible tax of poverty.
Right.
It's the simple mathematical reality that being poor is incredibly expensive. They actually reference the author Terry Pratchett and his famous economic logic of poverty, specifically the boots theory.
Oh, I love this analogy. It's the idea that a poor man has to buy cheap boots twice a year because they constantly fall apart, right?
Yep. While a rich man can afford to buy one pair of exceptional boots that last a whole decade,
So you fast forward 10 years and the poor man has spent twice as much money on footwear.
and his feet are still wet.
Yes. His feet are still wet. It just illustrates the total inefficiency of poverty perfectly.
It really does. You aren't just dealing with a lack of funds. The money you do have is constantly being bled dry by structural inefficiencies. You pay more for credit, you get hit with overdraft fees, you have to buy things in smaller, more expensive quantities.
But then the source takes this from a purely financial reality to an actual biological one. And this is where it gets crazy.
Yeah, the Harvard study.
Right. A landmark study by economists Senhel Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir. This is where that 13 IQ point drop comes in.
It's fascinating. They found that being under severe financial stress causes a measurable, immediate drop in cognitive function.
Which is literally the biological equivalent of losing an entire night of sleep.
Exactly. So the people who are in the most precarious situations, the ones who literally cannot afford a single financial misstep, they're being forced to navigate an incredibly complex terrain with a compromised cognitive bandwidth.
I always think of it like a smartphone running on 1% battery.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, when your phone gets that low, it goes into aggressive low power mode, right? It shuts down all the background apps, it dims the screen, it stops fetching new email.
It just does whatever it has to do to keep the screen on for the next 10 minutes.
Exactly. And your brain does the exact same thing under financial stress. It literally shuts down the long-term 10-year planning app just to survive the afternoon.
The human brain simply isn't designed to handle chronic existential stress like that. When you don't know how you're going to pay rent on Friday, your brain diverts all its resources to solving that immediate threat.
Meanwhile, the wealthy person is totally freed from that survival anxiety.
Right, meaning their brain has the luxury of making long-term rational decisions. The poor person's brain is locked in a cage of the immediate present.
So to fix this, the source doesn't suggest, immediately diving into the stock market, you have to build a buffer first.
Yeah, they suggest a $500 to $1,000 emergency reserve. And the critical distinction here is that this buffer is not an investment strategy. It's not wealth.
It's a financial airbag.
Perfectly said. Its sole purpose is to quiet the cognitive panic. It's just enough of a cushion between you and the next disaster, like a car breaking down or a medical bill.
So that the event is merely an inconvenience, not an absolute catastrophe.
Right. It basically turns your mental battery back up to 20%, allowing the brain's long-term planning functions to boot back up.
But clearing your own cognitive fog is only half the battle, right? Because you're still fighting your environment. The source talks about the crab bucket effect and mirror neurons.
Yeah, this part is really eye-opening.
So think about your own life for a second. What stands out to you when you realize your brain is unconsciously mimicking the financial habits of the 5 people you spend the most time with?
It's wild, because we are deeply social creatures, right?
Yeah.
And our mirror neurons are constantly calibrating our sense of what is normal based on our surroundings.
Biologically, your brain literally fires the same neurons when you watch someone else make a decision as when you make it yourself.
Exactly. So if you watch your friends finance cars they can't afford, or if they constantly complain that investing is a scam, your brain starts wiring that behavior as the safe, normal default.
So if you're in an environment that normalizes financial struggle, where ambition is viewed with suspicion, your brain will unconsciously match that baseline.
And if you try to climb out, like a single crab trying to escape a bucket, the others will instinctively pull you back down to maintain the group's equilibrium.
And it's not even out of malice.
No, no. It's just a psychological instinct to keep the tribe together.
So how do we override that biological programming? Because we can't always just up and move to a new town.
The source suggests building a secondary virtual neighborhood. You don't need a country club membership to change your environment. You literally just need a library card and an internet connection.
You download the mental models of builders by reading their books and listening to their interviews.
Yes, you are effectively tricking your mirror neurons into adopting a new standard of normal by exposing your brain to a different tribe.
Which brings up a really uncomfortable truth about how we actually earn money once our brains are finally clear.
Oh, the effort versus rarity concept.
Yeah, we're taught from a very young age that the market rewards effort proportionally. Like, work hard, sweat, put in the hours, and you'll get paid.
But the source argues this is one of the most expensive lies ever told to the working class.
Wait, really?
Yeah, because the market does not compensate effort. It compensates rarity combined with value.
Okay, give me an example, because that's a tough pill to swallow.
Well, think about a coal miner. The physical effort of a coal miner is astronomical. The work is dangerous, it's exhausting, and the output is essential. It literally powers cities.
Right.
But they are paid a fraction of what a senior software engineer makes. The engineer might write a piece of code over 6 months from an ergonomic chair in an air-conditioned room.
But that single piece of code can then run on 20 million devices simultaneously.
Exactly. The market doesn't care how tired you are at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It only cares about how difficult you are to replace and how widely your work scales.
I struggle with this whole stacking skills idea, though. Because, wait, so does this mean we should all just try to become tech billionaires? Or be jacks of all trades and masters of none? Like, if I'm a graphic designer, my natural instinct is to just grind and become a slightly better graphic designer.
I know, but the math heavily favors the intersection of skills.
Yeah.
The source frames this as building a moat.
A moat, like around a castle.
Yeah. It's not about being a scattered jack of all trades, jumping from one unrelated hobby to another. It's about combining specific, complementary skills to create a unique competitive advantage.
Oh, like the creator of the comic strip Dilbert, Scott Adams. They use him as a prime example.
Yes, exactly. Adams famously admitted he wasn't the greatest artist in the world, nor was he the world's funniest writer.
But he was competent at drawing, competent at writing jokes, and he had this deep insider understanding of corporate business culture from his time working in cubicles.
Right. Individually, none of those skills get you a syndicated comic strip. But the combination of all three in one person, that specific stack, is incredibly rare.
It's all about probabilities, then. Being in the top 1% of graphic designers is incredibly difficult and highly competitive.
Extremely.
But being in the top 25% of graphic designers, the top 25% of copywriters, and the top 25% of data analysts, that's actually achievable.
And when you combine those three, You suddenly become a unicorn in the marketplace. A graphic designer who understands how to analyze financial conversion metrics and write compelling copy is essentially irreplaceable.
So they've decoupled their income from an hourly wage because they provide a rare, specific value that businesses will pay a massive premium for.
You got it.
Okay, so let's say you do that. You build your rare skill stack, you transition from a commodity to a rarity, and you start bringing in serious income. The source warns that this is the exact moment you step into a massive trap.
Yeah, you get hit by the invisible forces of the financial machine. Which brings us to the concept of costumes versus assets.
The source illustrates this with two characters, Raymond and Daniel.
Right, so Raymond makes great money and immediately upgrades his lifestyle. He gets the luxury car, the designer clothes, the massive apartment. He looks incredibly wealthy to everyone on the street.
But his net worth is hovering around zero or even negative because everything he bought goes down in value while requiring constant maintenance, insurance, and debt service.
He bought what the source calls costumes.
I always compare buying costumes to buying an elaborate, expensive theatrical set for a play that has no script.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it looks amazing to the audience out in the crowd, but there's no actual substance generating a real return behind the curtain.
That's a perfect analogy. An asset, on the other hand, is buying a pump. So Daniel drives a 10-year-old car, lives modestly, and buys genuine assets. Things that mechanically put money into his pocket while he sleeps, like index funds or real estate.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Why do so many incredibly smart, high-earning people act like Raymond and buy the theatrical set?
It's entirely about dopamine.
Exactly. Buying the shiny new car delivers a massive, immediate rush of dopamine and social validation. You feel successful because people look at you and assume you're successful.
But the dopamine hit of buying an index fund, it's zero.
Completely zero. You can't take a selfie with a diversified portfolio.
No, you definitely can't. And while you're distracted by chasing those visible costumes, the wider economic machine is quietly running in the background, reshaping your purchasing power.
Which brings us to the two massive silent forces you have to understand: inflation and taxes.
Let's look at the mechanics of the inflation engine first. Most people think of inflation just as prices arbitrarily going up at the grocery store.
Right, like milk costs more today.
Yeah, but the underlying mechanism is actually a structural wealth transfer. When governments print or expand the money supply, that money doesn't just fall from the sky equally into everyone's checking account.
It enters the economy through banks, corporate debt, and asset markets.
Which means it hits the people who own things first. Stocks go up, real estate goes up. The asset holders capture that new money immediately, artificially increasing their net worth.
And then, as that money circulates, consumer prices slowly rise. The absolute last thing to rise are wages, because wages are what economists call sticky.
Exactly. Employers are naturally going to delay raising payroll for as long as humanly possible.
So by the time the wage earner finally gets a, 3% raise, inflation has already eaten 8% of their purchasing power.
It's a silent wealth transfer from people who hold cash and trade time for money to people who hold assets.
Which leads directly into the stark mathematical reality of the tax code. The source describes the tax code in almost every major economy as essentially a letter written to business owners and asset holders.
Yes. Earned income, the money you generate by trading your physical labor and time, is taxed at the absolute highest rates.
It's often extracted before the paycheck even clears your bank account. You literally have no control over it.
Meanwhile, capital income, the money made from assets, dividends, and selling investments, is taxed at significantly lower rates.
And if you own a business, you get vast pre-tax deductions for expenses that a regular W-2 employee could never dream of claiming.
Now, we need to pause here for a second and emphasize something important. The source isn't taking a political stance on this, and neither are we.
Right. We aren't debating whether this economic design is morally righteous or fundamentally broken.
We are just looking at the math. The traditional justification is that capital investment creates jobs and drives macroeconomic growth. But regardless of your personal politics, the mathematics remain identical.
The system simply operates on these rules. If you understand this structural reality, your goal has to be shifting your income from purely labor to ownership.
You have to read the map in front of you. You move to the side of the system that the code was designed to favor, rather than fighting the current.
But, knowing the mechanics of assets, inflation, and taxes is really just raw data. To actually build wealth, you need the final and honestly the most agonizing ingredient.
Time. You need time. And a deep understanding of how compounding actually functions.
The invisible magic.
Yes. The source makes a really profound point about the compound growth formula. People generally know the variables, right? Starting principal, rate of return, and time.
Yeah, standard math.
But human nature makes us obsess over getting a higher yield or waiting until we have more money to start. We forget that in the math of compounding, time isn't just a regular variable. It is the exponent,
It multiplies the effect exponentially.
meaning the back end of the curve is where all the explosive growth happens. The speaker in the source notes that 99% of their net worth came after their 50th birthday, built on 4 decades of continuous, quiet compounding.
It reminds me of the Charlie Munger quote they reference. The first 100,000 is the hardest.
Oh, yeah, that's so true.
And it's not because the math is harder at the beginning. Earning 10% on $1,000 is mathematically the exact same as earning 10% on a million.
Right, the percentage is identical.
The reason the first 100,000 is the hardest is because the psychology is agonizing. You're sitting there in the flat part of the curve, you're being disciplined, you're investing, you're driving the older car, but your progress is virtually invisible.
Meanwhile, your friends are flexing all their brand new dopamine-fueled costumes on social media.
Exactly. It requires immense psychological fortitude to delay gratification for decades, trusting a mathematical process you cannot physically see in your daily life.
Which brings us to the final unifying concept of the source's philosophy. Wealth is not a number.
Wait, what do you mean?
It's not a specific bank balance you hit where you suddenly cross a finish line into being rich. Wealth is an architecture. It's a holistic system.
And systems have to be built organically. The source actually outlines 5 specific components to this architecture, but they really function more like parts of an engine. You can't just slap them together, they feed into one another.
Exactly. So it starts with the foundation of defense.
Which is that $500 to the $1,000 buffer we talked about earlier, along with eliminating high-interest debt that compounds against you.
Because without that defense, you simply don't have the cognitive bandwidth or the financial stability to play offense.
Okay, so what's offense?
Once your airbag is in place, offense is the unglamorous, repetitive habit of consistently redirecting a portion of your income into productive assets, even if it's just $10 a day.
The habit of feeding the engine matters way more than the scale of the contribution.
Exactly. But you can't just rely on your own 2 hands forever. Eventually, your offense needs leverage.
And in this context, leverage doesn't mean borrowing dangerous amounts of money to gamble on real estate, right?
No. It means structural leverage.
Hmm.
Building income streams or utilizing rare skills that are entirely decoupled from your active physical presence. Your systems are generating value while you sleep.
As that engine starts generating real power, it naturally requires the 4th step, which is protection.
You have to actively guard your growing system from the erosion of taxes by understanding the tax code, from inflation by holding the right assets, and critically, from social pressure.
You have to build psychological armor against lifestyle creep.
You really do.
Yeah.
And the glue holding this entire architecture together is the 5th component, time.
Giving the system decades to operate untouched, allowing the exponent to do its heavy lifting.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? When you view wealth as an engine, the whole picture really shifts. If you have a massive 6-figure salary, but you spend every dime of it maintaining a fleet of leaky boats and costumes, well, you don't have wealth.
No, you just have a pipe.
And the absolute second you lose your job, get sick, or just want to stop working, that pipe runs completely dry.
But if you build this architecture, you're constructing a machine in the background. It quietly produces power, whether you show up to turn the crank that day or not.
That structural destination is the ultimate goal.
It really is.
Yeah.
And as we look back at the entirety of these concepts, from mirror neurons all the way to the tax code, the most powerful takeaway is the realization of why this feels like a secret at all.
As we discussed at the very beginning, it's not a conspiracy.
No. The poor aren't kept in the dark by some shadowy cabal trying to ruin their lives. They're kept in the dark by a silent cycle of inheritance. Not an inheritance of money, but an inheritance of knowledge.
It's an absence of conversation.
Exactly. Wealthy children learn about the mechanics of assets, structural leverage, and the tax code organically. They hear their parents discussing real estate deals at the dinner table.
They just absorb the culture of wealth and the patience of compounding simply by existing in that environment.
Their mirror neurons calibrate to a completely different baseline. Poor children never hear the conversation because the people around them never heard it either. The cycle is sustained by a profound, multi-generational silence.
But today, through this source, that silence gets broken. The map has been laid out, the mechanisms explained, but as the source so powerfully states, wisdom without execution is vanity.
Because knowing exactly how the engine works doesn't do you an ounce of good if you don't actually pick up the tools and build it.
And the clock is always running.
The one currency in that compounding formula you can never earn more of is time. The engine requires it to function.
Which brings us right back to where we started today. We talk about how severe financial stress, that constant survival mode, actively robs your brain of 13 IQ points.
It forces your mind to shut down its long-term planning just to survive the afternoon.
And we talked about how buying depreciating liabilities, buying costumes to look wealthy is like drilling holes in your own boat, keeping you trapped in that exact stress loop.
It's a tough cycle to break.
It is. So I want to leave you with one final actionable challenge to mull over today. Look around your life at the things you own and the habits you maintain. What is the one costume you are currently paying for that you could trade in today to buy back those 13 IQ points and begin building your engine?
That's an uncomfortable question to ask yourself, but answering it is really the first step on the map.
Thank you so much for joining us